Is the Walmart that has the most sales in the nation.
Chairman Benjamin Peña.
Present.
Vice Chairman Gerardo Gonzalez.
Present.
Treasurer Frank Orozco Jr. Secretary Hannah O'Quinn. Present. Board Member Anchor Jensen.
Present.
Board Member Dr. Joe Hinojosa.
Present.
Board Member Antonio Bernos.
Present.
Next item. Chairman, there were no public comments registered.
Thank you, Madam Murillo. Let's move on to consent agenda items, unless anybody would like to pull any of the items within the consent for separate consideration. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda item, 1.1 through 1.5?
So motioned.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
Next item, staff reports, business retention and expansion and workforce efforts, space and energy initiatives update, marketing and communications, strategic plan and business development, GBIC partnership to advance student STEM pathways via BISD racing, business recruitment and executive report. Business retention and expansion and workforce efforts by Natalie Garza.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon. So this month or this 2 months have been a little bit hectic, and we started with 3 business expansion visits that we had. We also had the opportunity to meet with Sam Houston University to expand our relationship with them. We attended a FabTech, participated in a transactional business conference in Chicago. We went to an event for Meet the Class. This was to reinforce the relationship with STX Metals, with one of our schools, and completed the basic economic development course. And right now for our coming events, we are getting ready and prepared for next week, Careers in Coffee, which is one of our biggest hiring events. We've been very successful as of right now. We have a lot of employers coming in, and we're looking forward to it. Any questions?
Any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garza. Space and Energy Initiatives Update by Giovanna Rangel.
Good afternoon, board members. It's been a busy couple of 2 months, so I'll just highlight a few things that I like to share with you all, starting with the Bronzeville Chamber Washington, D.C. fly-in. This was a successful event put together by the Bronzeville Chamber. Myself, Griselda, and Marlene were in attendance, and we took advantage of all of the meetings that were put together. I'd like to highlight one of the meetings that I attended with City Commission, Mayor, and the City Manager, which was with the Office of Space of Commerce. And so it was great conversation. They gave us a lot of advice, tips on who to contact, organizations to really, straighten that space relationship. So I really took, notes on that meeting and just took it back to Brownsville. We will continue to work with the city and commission as well to put together a plan and kind of move forward with what we were able to take from the fly-in. In addition to that, we attended the teleperformance distribution event. And I'd like to highlight this event because this actually took place yesterday. Teleperformance, as you all know, is one of our employers that we partner up. They participate in Careers in Coffee every year. And so they invited us to be a part of this. They gave over $150,000 worth of food, hygiene supplies, books, and toys for over 400 families. And so the mayor and myself were there to give just a small speech and a thank you to the volunteers that were there. And we also took the opportunity to introduce Natalie, as now she's taking on this role. And so that way, moving forward, they're able to work on any initiatives as they grow. They're currently actually expanding it. They don't have a front desk or anything like that. And so that's great. They have plans to even, buy the right side, meaning more jobs will come. And so this was just a very impactful event just for the community and just for us to be a part of. And lastly, I'd like to also highlight that we've been accepted as a member for the Texas Aerospace Research and Space Economy Consortium, which is TARSEC. The city, BCIC and ourselves applied, and we both, all three of us were accepted. So this just means that we're going to be able to tap into the statewide network, be a part of an executive committee, and just kind of discuss anything having to do with research in space, be able to work with government and academics as well. So we'll keep you posted as we receive additional information. Any questions?
I have a question. Can you
Yes,
go
sir.
back? On the Linda Job Fair, so how many employees were we looking for, or what type of employees were we looking for?
So this job fair was put together specifically for the CDL drivers. They were looking to fill 12 just as a start. And so they were actually able to fulfill all 12 positions. So very successful event. The salaries were amazing, and I think they did a great job in marketing themselves as well. We were able to share that as well with, just people that we knew. But they were just hiring as of right now for the CDL drivers.
And all that, to that, Mr. Gonzalez, the company officials said that some of their drivers were actually drivers that were working outside of the Brownsville area. A combination of those that live here and were just, commuting outside the entire time and wanted to be back home. And a few others that actually lived outside of Brownsville, were from Brownsville, and wanted to find an opportunity to come back. And now they have that opportunity.
Good to hear.
What was the pay range between those drivers, the CDOs?
$90,000 to $150,000, I believe.
Up to 150?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah, just to drive SpaceX and back. Yes.
Good report. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Rangel. Next item, Marketing and Communications by Marcela Sainz.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm going to start with our site selection consultant marketing efforts. I attended the 2025 Team Texas Consultant Summit in Waco, and it was a great opportunity to hear directly from site selectors about best practices, what information they're looking for in order to make the decisions that they make. We have also an advisory committee that we meet with. It's a few site selectors that give us their insights and, share best practices with us. We have our next meeting coming up in November, so I'll report after that. We keep up with them through newsletters, and one of the biggest efforts so far since I started is next week, we're actually hosting a group of 7 site selectors for a familiarization tour of Brownsville. We're taking them to see the greater Brownsville area. You should have received an invitation for dinner. I really hope you can make it. Next slide. Just a few snapshots of what was posted on social media this last 60 days. And I highlighted a few things where we did great. Marketing and PR, lots of things happening as well. I included a few pictures of different things that I collaborated somehow. We did a media pitch together with the city of Brownsville for government technology. And it was basically to highlight how Brownsville was at some point not very connected, and today things have changed. Also, I included a few pictures of IEDC in Detroit last month. I helped with the visuals for the panel presentation that we did there.
And our president and CEO was interviewed there as well. So just coordinating, that media opportunity. And last but not least, he also participated in a panel with the Texas Tribune at UTRGV. And same thing, just, behind the cameras, coordinating with anything that was needed on our end. Careers in Coffee is happening next week, so I've been very busy helping our team with everything that's needed from the marketing and PR side, all the visuals, the signage, billboards, ads. We have ads everywhere. We're expecting a lot of people, and this is an effort together with the City of Brownsville. And our annual report, just a quick update. We are expecting for our annual report to be completed by the first week of December. We're very excited. It's going to be our first one, and I'll keep you updated on that.
So with respect to the site selectors, what was the number one criteria that they look for in selecting a place?
I don't think we
can-
have one. Okay.
Yeah, I can jump in. So site selectors, I mean, over 20 years of economic development experience. 20 years ago, it was all about real estate and incentives. That played a huge role in recruiting companies to any given area. And then about 10 years ago, I'd say it started shifting towards workforce. And today it's about workforce and the programs that you have to support the local talent that you have, because workforce availability, there's not a lot throughout the U.S. We're fortunate enough that here in the Valley, I mean, we still have availability, but that's what they're looking for. Who do you have and what programs do you have to keep them there and to upskill them?
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Saenz. Next item, Strategic Plan and Business Development by Griselda Munoz.
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. So this last October 6th, we had an opportunity to invest in our upper management leadership. So basically, we took a whole day, a strategic session with the leadership consultancy, the Eden Collective. And basically, the goal of this class or leadership day was to make sure that GBIC is driving on operational excellence. Some of the key components or the objectives that were completed that day, you see it on the screen. We were able to prioritize and organize our organization, GBIC, put in place how the annual review for staff is going to be conducted from this point forward. We also work on the KPIs for our organization and performance metrics. Another one is, this was more of an exercise the upper management had to go through. It was a Son of Genius, and it was a very energetic exercise. And basically, we focus our energy where we're most effective. We remove all the friction and optimize our impact in the organization. And lastly, we receive some coaching to address current challenges and immediately implement new best practices for GBIC. This comprehensive training ensures that GBIC leadership remains agile, aligned, and equipped with the latest best practices to achieve our strategic mission. And lastly, everyone knows the GBIC board retreat will happen on Saturday, October 25th. It's scheduled from 9 to 1 at IBC Bank. More details to come. Questions?
The IBC Bank, is that on Ruben Torres?
Ruben Torres, yes. Questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, GBIC Partnership to Advance Student STEM Pathways via BISD Racing. Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. So I am providing a brief recap of our visit to the Oliveira Middle School's Green Power USA Electric Race Car team. In attendance were the State Board of Education member LJ Francis, BISD Board President Daniela Lopez Valdez, and BISD Chief Academic Officer Beatriz Hernandez, the students, the coaching staff, and the GBIC staff. Beyond the impressive hands of the STEM designating, building, and racing electrical vehicles, we witnessed something deeply meaningful. Students blossoming into confident problem solvers and teammates. Students who once were unsure about engineering now speak with assurance about safety, checklist, gear ratios, and race strategies. And they do it as a cohesive unit, planning, testing, moving forward, and succeeding together. That teamwork builds voice, leadership, and resilience, skills they will carry into college, careers, and community life. For the GBIC, the impact is clear. This initiative grows our future workforce in engineering, energy, and advanced manufacturing. This program helps strengthen Brownsville's reputation for innovation and gives employers real opportunities to connect with and support the next generation of local talent. When students see themselves as builders and innovators, our community gains role models today and skilled talent tomorrow. I left convinced that every hour we invest here returns to Brownsville as confident, capability, and opportunity that will endure. Any questions? Yes.
Are they all female by design, or was that just?
So they do have a process, right? They do applications, and they do have a board that actually gets to interview all the applicants. But for this particular year, it turns out that the girls
Just had the better.
outshine. Yes, exactly. So, but in the previous years, there has been males, but for this particular, last year and this year, it was a full female team.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Well, that's good to know, but now is this district-wide, BISD district-wide?
Sorry?
For the STEMS program for the building, design, and the race of electric vehicles, is that open to all students?
Yes, to all students, and this is from the middle school, but I believe they just started a high school program as well. So yes, I believe from this particular STEM program, it goes all the way to college. Mhm.
Is that just particular to that school, or is it open to all the?
All the schools have it. I mean, it's there for all the schools, but for this particular reason, Oliveira has moved forward, right? So they have the momentum. But I believe Ms. Hernandez said that there are other schools that are starting to join. So
Sorry, continue.
So they're moving away from just Oliveira Racing Team, and they're going to BISD Racing Team.
And is this the first time that they participate?
No, it's been going on since 2014, but the momentum, like I said, has just been, last year they won third place, but only because another car crashed into them. And so they didn't have an extra car so that they can continue the race. So we're trying to see if maybe they can get two cars, so that way if something like that happens, they can continue the race. But yes, but they won third place in the nationals. Yes.
So how much is one car like this? What's the
Well,
cost?
just the frame of the car is $700, and the STEM program just provides $1,100.
Is that the only school we are supporting for this, just the Oliveira?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is Oliveira the only middle school?
For right
that
now,
was-
yes. They are trying other schools to see if they will open them. But again, these coaches, they do this, they don't get paid. So they do it
I
voluntarily.
think you sent us an invite for Monday. Are we doing something? for them?
Yes. A check presentation for them, yes.
So how much are we donating? We can't say?
We've donated $3,000 and we're going to increase that to $5,000. It is in alignment with our workforce strategy, developing the STEMS programs that are needed and being requested by our largest private corporate citizens, which are SpaceX, the LNG plants, and all the manufacturing sector. There are a handful of schools that are involved in these programs. Oliveira is the one that's really gone the farthest as far as the competition. That's why they've been recognized as of late. But in addition to that, the one thing that we've seen is that the popularity of F1, for some reason that's really gotten popular, and then the emphasis on STEMs has really brought a lot of attention to these programs, which is good because that's exactly what we need as far as our strategy to support our local industry.
I agree. Good.
Yeah,
Good
it's a good I agree, but right now, just Oliveira, but are we moving on to support BISD so they can get it, so they can get it to all the schools?
Not too sure. I cannot speak on their behalf, but I will find out for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are some of the conversations that we've been having, like Mr. Gonzalez and I, with respect to education and supporting the pipeline of the workforce development of the people that are going to be coming down here. So to the extent that we can support that type of programming for workforce development, I think it's in our best interest.
Exactly, and to add to that, we were with a site selector at the port a couple of days ago, and he was very poignant as far as questions regarding workforce and what we were doing. And, because workforce is an issue throughout the country, and we use this as an example of where we're finding ways to support local competitions, local schools, specifically for industry. And he was very keen on that as far as that's, not a lot of communities are doing that. And of course, our answer is well, we're taking our lead from, customer service 101. What does the client want? And in this case, it's the industry.
So that's one topic of our strategic planning that I certainly would like to have to see if we can exploit that a little bit more.
I will certainly welcome that.
Excellent idea. Excellent. I think the same as the chairman, we should explore that more.
Okay, what was that? I'm sorry.
No, it's an excellent idea, and I think the same as the chairman, we should explore that more because it's something tangible. It's something we can see happening.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next item, business recruitment by Gerardo Briones.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we did have a busy couple of months. Under the governor's RFIs that we received, we had a total of 24. Of those, we submitted 8. Local leads, which we received 10, and actually all are active. So we're working very closely with all 10 of those. Under research FDI, we had several, I want to say international, but they were in Canada. We had 6 meetings there. 2 are still active, and there are 4 that we're still doing follow-ups. FUP means follow-up, sorry. But we are very busy. Ms. Serendida Martinez, our business development coordinator, has been helping quite a bit, and she's kind of responsible right now for making sure all those RFIs are submitted. Next. So had a couple of meetings in Monterrey, one with Tec de Monterrey and also one with Universidad Autónoma de Nuevo León. Both were on workforce collaborations. We have some big projects coming up, and we're looking at how we could attract additional engineers that might be eligible to work in the U.S. Another meeting in Monterrey was also with Invest in Monterrey. It was more on how we could collaborate on doing some more industry partnerships and any type of trade missions that we could do, probably cross international. We had a meeting, Gilberto, myself, and Elazar, with the site selector that Gilbert mentioned a little while ago, Mr. Mac Farr. That was a pretty good meeting. He was very impressed. And then our board chairman, Mr. Ben Peña, myself, and Salvador, we went up to Dallas to the Texas Economic Development Corporation Investor Summit Texas Takeover, America's New Financial Hub. The New York Stock Exchange and others are looking at Texas very strongly now, and they are opening up some satellite facilities in the North Texas area. It was pretty interesting, but all that is taking place in northern Texas. But we'll see what we can drag down here. Does anyone have any questions?
Jerry,
Yes, sir.
the meetings in Monterrey and the universities, what is their take on what's happening in Brownsville? And
Actually, they love it, and they're very interested in collaborating. We got invited to several expos, job fairs, both in Zoom and both in person. Tec de Monterrey is actually the most impressive one, not to take anything away from UNA. We can work with them as well. But they actually have a database of all their students working worldwide that they can actually tap into. So if we need someone with 2-3 years of experience, they actually have that database that they can go after. So, and I think in executive session, we'll go over some projects that'll highlight why we're doing certain things.
Just as an FYI, we, IBC hosted in San Antonio, a summit for Exatex.
Yes, sir.
In the month of September.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something, if you need help, I know the president of the board, it's a good friend of mine. And the president of the school, I also have a good relationship with him. And I also have a good relationship with Universidad de Monterrey, the president of the school. He's a good friend of mine.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I think we have a lot of strong connections to Monterrey with respect to economic development and potential prospects to end up here in Brownsville from Monterrey, as well as the workforce side as well from those two universities. So I think it's very important that we do have a strong presence in Monterrey.
We have those lines open.
To that end. So
Yes, sir.
let's continue doing that.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Next item, executive report by Gilberto Salinas.
Thank you. Chairman, members of the board, along the lines of what Jerry was saying, we have been hosting quite a few prospects. Our activity is pretty high. It's actually increased significantly in the last 2 months, both the number of projects as well as the quality of projects that we're seeing. And that's due to the proactiveness and the fact that we now have an industrial park that we can actually market out there. Along those lines, we did have a visit from Project Chiquita this week. It is a supplier for the aerospace sector. It's a tier 1 supplier. They're looking to create somewhere between 200 to 300 jobs, about $20 million in capital investment. And that could potentially be the first tenant at the Greater Brownsville Tech Park. And I like what you were saying, both asking and saying about the tech in Monterrey, as far as economic development and workforce. This is actually a company. It's from the U.S. And again, they are a tier 1 supplier for an aerospace company operating here in the area. And one of the questions that they did ask was, do you have relations with the training institutions, specifically the Monterrey Tech in Monterrey, to which we said, yes, we do. And we're working with them right now because this particular company hires a lot of students, engineers coming out of that university. So that just kept feathered perfectly onto our laps as far as working with them and this project coming in and specifically asking for that workforce. So again, things are working out, well, very good alignment as far as this particular project and what we're doing in the Monterrey area. And then talking about timing, they were here on Monday and Tuesday, and our job was made a lot easier when your local rocket company is launching a rocket, and we took them out to view the rocket launch. So they were very, very excited about that. So it shows very well when you're able to do that. So the timing was very good. Talking about relationships, the Office of the Governor, we are going to be in Austin at their office next month. This is the Economic Development Division. We're going to be providing them our annual community update. We were there last year as well, and giving them an overview on projects, some of the leads that we're seeing, some of the trends that we're seeing here in the area on the border, our availability both of workforce and industrial space. And then we'll update them on the Port of Brownsville as well, since we have a working relationship with them, and there's two huge projects that we're supporting the port as well. Those leads came from the governor's office. So we'll be there to discuss all that. And then coming back to what Marcela mentioned about the site selectors, we've got 7 site selectors coming in next week. That's part of our first annual FAM tour to Brownsville. They're coming in from different parts of the US, and one of them is actually coming in from Europe. And again, the strategy there is to showcase the city, our industrial areas, our new projects, and all the assets that we have in place. And site selectors, they are a small group. There's about 200 to 250 of them in the United States, and they control about 70 to 75% of new projects in the United States. So what that means, they are the influencers behind the influencers, which is they are the ones that provide advice to Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 CEOs as to where their next investment should be made. So it's influencers as like the traditional influencer, but not social media influencer. Does that make sense? Okay. We've done this in the past with huge success. Moving on to the organizational and staff development, we had our team attend the IEDC annual conference. That's the International Economic Development Council. That was in Detroit last month. It was important for our staff as far as training, since we're still fairly new. And I know this organization had not been there because I'm usually there every year. And so it was very important for us, for them as well. And then as a bonus, we also spoke at the conference. We were asked to speak about SpaceX, Starbase, everything that's happening out there, and how perhaps other EDOs can use our model for growth for their respective communities. That was Giovanna and myself in that panel discussion. Again, this was a national conference. And then lastly, on the board retreat, Gisela touched on this. This is for Saturday. And as a reminder, this retreat is designed for big picture, the vision, not just of this organization, but the vision as it pertains to economic development and the future of the city. And then we'll be tasked with creating the blueprint, which is basically the how. How do we implement that vision that you all are going to be coming up with? So it's exciting to now be taking a very important step forward for the next 3 to 5 years for this, not just this organization, but for this community. Concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Gilbert, on the site selector tour, what does that entail? Is that like a visit to SpaceX and other LNG plants, or the tour of the area, and they actually get to go on site, or?
All of the above.
Okay.
So site selectors, when they come in, Marcela's on me because she's like, no presentations. These guys don't want any presentations. They want like a roundtable discussion. Talk to me about what's happening in your community. So they'll be meeting in our office to kick it off. We'll be there for an hour, 2 hours, and then we take them for a windshield tour of our industrial areas, and then we go into the Port of Brownsville, so they'll be taking them on their tour as well, showing them all the areas. And these tours, usually you're talking through everything. That is the actual presentation. And then from there, yeah, we'll be visiting SpaceX, and usually what they want to do, they want to go into at least 1 or 2 actual manufacturing facilities. They want to go see the facility. And a lot of times what they ask is, we don't want you, the economic developers, in the room while we're talking to plant managers, because then they want to ask the plant managers the real questions. Talk to me about what's happening in this community, your workforce, quality of workforce, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing? So they're very open about that. It's like, if we're going to come in, we're coming in to do a deep dive. And then they're meeting some of our community leadership and some of our other organizations that support us in economic development.
With respect to the Chiquita group that we were able to take to the launch, first of all, I think they were able to connect, because they had, earlier that day, they had been at SpaceX and they got the tour. And while at that tour, one of the main people with the investor group, I know it's different from a site selector, but as he was touring the plant, he said he identified at least 30 parts that he could manufacture himself and be a supplier to SpaceX. And so when he connected that with the actual launch of the rocket, you should have seen his face. He lit up like, you know, he was glowing. And so I think for them to experience and see it and feel it, I think it just solidifies their interest to be here, to come to Brownsville and be part of what's happening on, with SpaceX and LNG as well. So I think it's very important that we put those site selectors in, where it's all at.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad you brought that up because that is, one of the superpowers of an economic development organization, being able to have a good BRE program where local industry can open the doors. You can come in and help them, like you said, identify opportunities where, other suppliers can come in and help them with that, or whether it be workforce or whatever. But that's really the strength of an EDO. If you make a phone call, will your local industry pick up the phone, or will they open the doors for you? And you'd be surprised how many economic development organizations cannot do that.
no, without a doubt, I think we're at ground zero of an economic boom. And so it's going to change. The landscape is going to change, and the floodgates are going to open of people wanting to be here. So we really need to be ready for that.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Salinas. Next item, discussion, consideration, and acknowledgement of the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation financials and quarterly reports, presented by Salvador Villalpando.
Good afternoon, Chairman and board members. Today we'll be going over the financials for fiscal year 2025 through the month of September. So that's the full fiscal year. One thing to know before going over the numbers, these numbers are not final for the fiscal year. We're still pending to capture the sales tax for September. That information will be released by the comptroller next month, as well as pending to capture some year-end invoices. With that being said, the total net position is currently 40.7 million, with total assets at 41 million, 681,000 in cash, 26.1 million in investments, 616,000 in receivables, which is a sales tax for August, and 13.6 million in capital assets. Liabilities are currently at 372,000. Again, net position 40.7 million, and that's not final numbers, but they shouldn't change by much. The sales tax for the month of September should offset year-end invoices, one of the main ones being the application number 3 for the phase 1 of the tech district. On this slide here, we have the sales tax comparison for fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2024. Since we didn't have a meeting last month, I'm highlighting the sales tax collections for the last 2 months, which is July and August. Collections in July increased by 1.7%, 669,000. Collections in August increased by 4.3%, with collections being 616,000. Total collections so far for the first 11 months, or almost a full fiscal year, are 7.2 million, which is a 2.8% increase. And we're expected to collect a total of 7.8 million once September collections are collected for the fiscal year. On here, we have the quarterly investment report. This captures the portfolio as of September 2025. The investment portfolio as of September is 26.8 million. We have 7.3 million in demand deposits, with the majority being in the money market account for PNC, 6.6 million, which is yielding 4.08%, 19.5 million in the investment pools, with 7.3 million in Texas class, which is yielding 4.07%, and 12.25 million in text pool, yielding 4.26%. The weighted average days to maturity are 24, which basically translates to our portfolio being pretty liquid. If we need it, we're able to capture it ASAP. And lastly, the weighted average yield for the portfolio is slightly higher than the 3-month treasury bill as of September. Our weighted average yield is 4.06 compared to a T-bill, which is at 3.86%, which is a good indicator for our investment portfolio. I think that covers the financials if there's any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Is that a motion to approve the financials?
We have a first, we have a second to.
Second?
Any further discussion regarding the financials? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carries.
Next item, discussion, consideration, and possible action, if any, on Resolution R 2025-10, approving signatories of bank accounts and related matter, presented by Salvador Villalpando.
On this item, we're asking for the board to adopt Resolution R 2025-10. This resolution is to update the authorized signers to the column on the right-hand side, which would update the signers to have Mr. Peña, Mr. Orozco, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Salinas, and Mr. Briones. So this is recommending the board to adopt it as per the updated board positions from the last board meeting that we had.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Villalpando. Next item, closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, 551.072, and 551.087, related to Project Industrial, Project Mount Main, Project Nose Wheel, Project Pathway, Project Red Planet, and Project High Voltage.
Motion to go in executive.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are in executive session. Time is 4:40.
Yeah, they'll go to the back.
Thank you.
Chairman, we need a motion to reconvene.
Can I have a motion to reconvene into open session? It is 7:14.
Next motion.
Second,
I second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. We are in open session.
At this point, I'd like to request a motion for approval, but noting that the chairman, Mr. Peña, Mr. Gerardo Gonzalez, and Anchor Jensen are abstaining. And that would be a motion for no action on the items in executive.
I make a motion.
Second,
I second.
so we have a motion and a second for no action in executive session. Board Member Jensen, Board Member Peña, and Board Member Gonzalez abstaining.
Correct.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
And just for the record, the chairman and Anchor didn't vote on this item. It was just Mr. Bernus, Ms.
That's
Ontin,
correct.
and Dr. Hinojosa. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn, we are adjourned.
Make motion. Yeah.
Do we get a second?
Need a second?
Yes.
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.